When we think of our day job, we don't think it'll take a turn for the worst and we won't see our family again for over 6 years. When Gerco van Deventer was getting ready, heading out for his day job, the unthinkable happened, and he and his family's lives changed forever.
47-year-old Gerco van Deventer was captured in 2017 while on his way to a power plant construction site south of Tripoli. Gift of the givers say he was later sold to Al-Qaeda in Mali. The organisation has been involved in efforts to secure his release since 2018.
It's been 6 years since Gerco van Deventer, a paramedic from Swellendam, was kidnapped in Libya, then sold and tracked to Al-Qaeda in northern Mali. In a recent video shared on social media, Van Deventer indicated that he misses his wife and 3 children and hopes to be released soon.
Gerco van Deventer was reportedly abducted while working as an on-site paramedic in Libya in 2017. Now, his wife is still keeping the hopes alive for his safe return. And, of course, you'd remember the story is surfacing again after a video was circulating just recently of her husband, just doing the rounds, pleading for assistance.
It was a bit of a shock to start off with, but as always, it is quite lovely getting a video of my husband. So yes, and he looked well. So yes, it's a pleasant surprise, and it's always very positive and encouraging to get new videos, the proof of life videos of my husband.
A South African-born paramedic, husband and father of 3, a man whose life's journey took him from the elite units of the South African military to the unpredictable landscapes of Afghanistan, and eventually to a place where silence has become the most haunting companion. For thousands of days, Gerco's family chose silence out of fear that they would never see the man they loved again, a desperate plea for his life and his safety. Gerco's story is not just his own, it is a tale of resilience, dedication, and how far we will go to survive. Hi everyone, so that was a little bit of intro before this case. It is quite hectic and quite the case, but hello, welcome back to the channel, and I hope everyone is doing very well. Today we're going to talk about the most insane case of a South African being kidnapped and held hostage for over 6 years. For Gerco and his family, this case is obviously incredibly fresh. He was only released last year. So we do hope that the Van Deventer family are getting all the healing and help that they can. And we really do hope that Gerco is healing both physically and mentally. But with that being said, let's get into today's case.
Intended for mature audiences only.
Gerco van Deventer's strong mindset and hard work started years ago. Gerco was a combat medic, operational specialist, and a man with 22 years of experience, who served in the elite units of the South African military's health services. From rapid deployment to search and rescue, Gerco was there when others needed him the most. The floods of Mozambique, the MTS Oceanos rescue, and the Nairobi embassy bombings. These were not just incredibly historic events that happened. These were part of Gerco's life and just showed how selfless and how he would rush in to help people wherever he could. After Gerco left the military, he continued to work in the service sector and worked for a private security company. It seemed like he worked for the security company but within a medical umbrella, so Gerco may have been one of the main medical officers in these sites, but exactly what he did was a bit unclear. But within this job, Gerco would travel all over the world. Wherever this company would need his medical expertise or his services, they would pay for him to go out there and he would work there. So he was often away from home for weeks to months on end, and this was just what Gerco had to do in order to put food on the table. I don't think that this was his end goal and exactly what he wanted to do in life. Serving people, yes, but being away from his family, being away from his loved ones was just a means to an end in order to get that money in. But going to remote areas and risking his life was just part of the job. And he knew the risks, and so did his family. But you never think that anything bad is going to happen to you. So in 2017, while Gerco was in Libya, he was on his way to the power plant construction site around 1,000 kilometers outside of the capital. He and 3 Turkish men were in a vehicle at the time. So it sounds like these 3 Turkish men that were in the vehicle with Gerco at the time were engineers that were heading off to this plant. So Gerco, like I said, was one of the lead medical guys at this power plant, and then the 3 guys were engineers. So they were all heading out to this power plant, getting quite a distance, quite out there away from the capital. And this all happened on the 4th of November 2017, when the 4 men inside this vehicle were in an area called Ubari. They were driving on the 3rd of November. They were driving this vehicle when 4 men in another bigger vehicle kind of blocked them from getting past in the road. And when all of this took place, Gerco was 47 years old. So like I said, this vehicle then stopped Gerco and these 3 Turkish men in their vehicle. They kind of blocked the road so Gerco couldn't get through. They exited the vehicle with guns pointing straight at these 4 men in the car. They held them up at gunpoint, and this is where the terror started. Gerco would then vanish into the shadows, taken hostage by the unknown. He was sold to Al-Qaeda in Mali the following year in 2018. These 4 men were held captive, starved, and beaten. So if we take a step back and go back to when this vehicle first blocked Gerco in the road, we can't imagine the absolute terror that Gerco and these other guys must have felt in that vehicle. I know that for many South Africans or anyone in the world who has experienced violence in some way or another, it is scary. And when you're part of that violence, everything kind of slows down. And I can't imagine what Gerco and these guys must have been thinking. Where did they go? How did they get out of this? But when 4 men are pointing guns at you, when you're just on your way to work, there is absolutely nothing you can do. And I'm sure that he and these other men felt absolutely powerless at that point, and they just had to do what these guys told them to do. So now that Gerco and these 3 engineers were held captive, so 7 months in, the 3 Turkish men were actually released and they were able to go home. It's unclear under what conditions the 3 Turkish men were released. Maybe there was a ransom that was paid and that's why they were released so early. But you can imagine that Gerco was like, oh my word, these 3 guys are released. Maybe it's now my turn. Maybe it's coming. There must have been this little bit of hope that Gerco may have felt because these guys have all left. It's only a matter of time until I'm released now. But that moment would take another 5.5 years to accomplish. So in 2018, the Gift of the Givers were asked to get involved in the negotiations and to try and bring Gerco home. When the kidnappers first got in touch with the Gift of the Givers, it was said that the price to release Gerco was initially $3 million. Now, firstly, $3 million is an obscene amount of money. Secondly, if we convert $3 million into rands, it is a ridiculous amount of money. So because of this, initially, the Gift of the Givers were unsuccessful in negotiating Gerco's release. But the Gift of the Givers also do not pay ransoms. They only facilitate the release of captives. So the Gift of the Givers were never going to pay any money towards Gerco's release because many countries in the world actually have that rule that they will not pay money or ransom to kidnappers. And the Gift of the Givers, like I said, are just there to facilitate the release. They're there to try and help in any way they can, except monetary wise. They will not pay money for anyone's release. And also, there was no proof of life of where Gerco was, if he's even alive, what state he's in, is he all right? Nothing. Gerco had not seen his family since he was captive. He didn't know if they were okay. It must have been absolute mental torture for both sides, Gerco being there and his family back home. So eventually the kidnappers then said, okay, well, Gerco can then be released for $500,000. And that still is a massive amount of money that many South Africans or people in the world cannot afford. After 2 years of negotiating and getting the ransom fee down, COVID happened. And the world shut down, and so did negotiations, and Gerco was left in the unknown for another 2 years. So eventually, COVID eased up and negotiations were then able to continue again. And leaders from all around the world, especially in South Africa, went back and forth to Mali to try and negotiate Gerco's release. It was a massive deal. There were a lot of Islamic leaders in South Africa who went there to try and negotiate with the kidnappers. They went during Ramadan as well to try and pull on the heartstrings a bit, but nothing. Nothing was happening, and no matter how many times the leaders went there, it seemed like the kidnappers were just not going to give Gerco back, alive at least. And then, during all of this video was released, and it was one of the only videos that the Van Deventer family ever saw of their loved one.
Good day. Today is the 15th of March 2023. My name is Gert Jacobus van Deventer. As far as I know, the only South African held by Al-Qaeda jihadis in the north of Mali. I was kidnapped on the 3rd of November 2017 in Ubari, Libya, on the way to the worksite where I was contracted as the site medic. On the same day, 3 Turkish engineers was also kidnapped, and they were from Enka Construction. After 8 months, I was sold to JNIM and brought to the north of Mali. During my captivity, I was shot in my left arm, and since then I have limited movement due to misaligned bones. A glimmer of hope came when I heard about the new South African embassy in Algeria. It awoke me, pushed me to do something and build a bridge to reach the world outside. This video that you are watching is my last hope. I want my release to be made possible by any means possible. And I don't have any information regarding my family. Before I was kidnapped, I was happily married with 3 children. I do not know what is their current situation and well-being. So I hope this video will activate any action that will lead to my release. Because the thing that I miss the most and long for the most is what they took from me, my freedom.
So with this, the charities and the Islamic organizations that were trying to help, the gift of the givers, there were so many organizations, and these organizations were a strong force when put together. They really were chipping away at the kidnappers little bit by little bit. So things didn't happen immediately. But if we talk about the gift of the givers and the other charities and organizations involved, they were actually successful in releasing another South African. Not that I ever actually knew about this, but another South African who was kidnapped for just under 6 years. And his name is Stephen McGowan. And he was also held by Al-Qaeda in Mali for nearly 6 years. But he was then released in 2017 on compassionate grounds. What that means, we're not quite sure. But just when Stephen was then released by Al-Qaeda, it seemed like near the end of the year, Gerco was then captured again by them. But then fantastic news rang out for South Africa and the Van Deventer family. In December of 2023, the Gift of the Givers announced the unconditional release of Gerco van Deventer 6 years and 1 month after he had been kidnapped in Libya all those years ago. And how this all happened was that Gerco was released to Algeria. Then Gerco had to explain his whole situation, where he was then taken to hospital, and the South African government was then notified that Gerco was in hospital in Algeria, and he was then recovering from the immense trauma, and both mentally and physically, as much as they could help in the hospital. 6 years and 1 month is how long Gerco van Deventer spent away from his loved ones, alone, hurt, scared, wondering if he'll ever see his loved ones again. And I'm sure he doubted many of the times that he would ever go home again. He must have thought, why me? Why am I here? Why is this happening? Why did everyone else get released? Why am I still here? And I think that is so sad and so terrifying. Imagine you're just going to work every day and you just don't come home for 6 years. Some people just decide to violently pluck you away from your everyday life and then turn your and your family's lives into absolute turmoil. There is still a lot of information that is not available, and this is just the information that I was able to collect. However, there's also another thought of what happens to Gerco now that he's home. He doesn't just plop back into society. He's been immensely tortured, both mentally, physically, and now he has to kind of adapt to society. And many psychologists are wondering how he would be able to get back into society all right. And they do think that it is possible, but it's going to take quite a while. With that being said, we wish Gerco van Deventer and his family all the quality time and love that they deserve. And I'm sure all of us here really hope for Gerco and his family that their physical and mental healing go well, and that we're wishing you all the best. But for everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for being here again with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.